Welcome to The Blockchain Lawyer, a podcast on technology and law. Dennis Hilleman is an accomplished lawyer with over 13 years of experience and a passion for creating a better future through blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and other disruptive innovations. All statements expressed in this podcast are the opinions of the host and his guests only and are in no way legal or financial advice. And now, here is your host, Dennis.
Hi everyone, this is Dennis speaking. Before we head into the interview, I want to recommend to you to join the Blockchain Lawyers Network. It's a social network running on many networks where lawyers, entrepreneurs, and blockchainers from all over the world connect and discuss blockchain and regulation. We discuss matters like blockchain and privacy or the regulation of cryptocurrencies. I'd love for you to join. It's totally free. If you want to join, go to www.blockchainlawyersnetwork.com. That's one word, blockchainlawyersnetwork.com. Or you can also reach the network via theblockchain.lawyer. So either www.blockchainlawyersnetwork.com or theblockchain.lawyer. Happy to see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of The Blockchain Lawyer. My name is Dennis Hilleman, and today I've got Olga Stepanova, a German lawyer, with me. I know Olga from the German Institute of Standardization. She's a fabulous lawyer working in the crypto and blockchain field, and she's especially working on the matters of privacy. Hello, Olga. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hello, Dennis. Nice to be once again in your podcast today, the English podcast and not only the German one, which is also really recommendable for all those who are able to speak German. So I'm very happy to be hosted today by you, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today on privacy matters which are relevant in the blockchain ecosystem.
Thank you, Olga. Yes, Olga has already been on my German podcast, Recht im Ohr. And like I said on that podcast, now she's on the English podcast. So let's start. Olga, can you give us tell us a little bit about your background? How did you come? What are you doing? How did you come into blockchain? And why do you like the technology?
Yes. So actually, when I started working here at WINHELLER, a lot of my colleagues were really deep into cryptos. So they were into crypto taxation and also into banking law. So into all these regulatory frameworks from a banking perspective. And my aim or my interest was always in a bit of different direction. So I was not too much into crypto in the way that I was looking how to sell or how to buy cryptos and how it is regulated from the BaFin, for example. I was more or less into the technology itself because I've seen that there is a lot of use cases behind or beside the cryptos. And this is where I started to get more and more acquainted with this technology. And pretty soon I've seen the first articles or opinions of people working in this field who said that there is an issue with data protection. And that is the starting point for me to start to investigate, to research on how this technology really works and what are the threats for data protection, or also the advantages for data protection. And step by step, for about 2 years, I think I'm into this field. And yes, I'm searching for solutions. And I think one of the solutions is, which we found while working with you together, Dennis, on the German standardization for this field. So yes, I'm really, really interested how the future will be, since we have more or less a solution for the privacy problem.
Very good. We'll go into these details, but first of all, would you like to give the listeners an overview? What issues what issues are there discussed between blockchain and GDPR?
Sure. So there are lots of different issues. I don't like to call them problems, actually. I like to call them issues, depending on which kind of blockchain technology you're using, because a lot of people just say, well, this is the blockchain technology, and they do not consider that there are several different blockchains, like the public blockchains, the permissioned blockchain, or for example, the private blockchain. So depending on the technology, also the issues differ. So mostly one can say that controllership is an issue for all of them. And also the question, who is who? So who are the actors in the concrete blockchain scenario? Who is the controller? Who is the processor? Where is the joint control given? This is one point. Another point.
Yes, yeah, we're listening.
Okay, so another point is, of course, the right to rectification and the right to erasure or the right to deletion. This is, I think, the most prominent point. And last but not least, a point where I'm deeply doing research on is the third country data transfer. So imagining we have got a public blockchain like the Bitcoin blockchain, where the miners are spread all over the world, having copies of the whole blockchain. And this also leads to the question whether we are facing a third country data transfer, because the GDPR has got special prerequisites for such a transfer, and how we can handle this point, because actually we never can say where a user, a blockchain miner appears or disappears. It can happen all over the world. So these are the three things I deem most important, but of course there are lots of other things, but this is more or less a question of the concrete blockchain scenario, and perhaps not correct to address this issue here, because we are talking about the general issues which occur in the most blockchain scenarios.
Thank you very much. Let us start with the first issue. And I like that you call it issue, not a problem. I'll switch to that as two now. Let us talk about the first issue. That is the issue of controllership and processorship in an EU GDPR scenario. First of all, can you explain in general what it means to be a controller or processor under EU GDPR before we refer to blockchain?
Sure. So one can say that the roles in the GDPR are determined by the GDPR. So that means that there are only a limited roles. So whether you're a controller or you are a processor, or for example, a joint controllership is given. But at least the point is that the GDPR, when it was written, it doesn't have in mind that another scenario like the blockchain scenario can be given. So all the regulations in the GDPR, they are tailored for centralized solution and not for decentralized solutions. So this is the main issue about GDPR and blockchain. So who is a controller? A controller is a natural or a legal person or an agency or other public body, for example, who determines the purposes and means of the processing. So, for example, a company, you are working at the company and I'm working at the company, and this company is the controller, because this company determines why they are processing data and how they are processing data. And of course, not everybody can do everything. So of course, we use so-called processors. So companies who are helping us to process personal data. For example, we use a hoster. So our website is hosted by a hoster. And this hoster, of course, processes personal data, for example, of website users who try to get access to our website. So this is a processor for us, and it is pretty clear. Also, your company is also hosting the website somewhere and also makes use of a processor. So you're the controller because it's your data. Obviously, it's your website, but somebody helps you in processing this data. And now we have got this very special setup with the blockchain. That means that in a decentralized field, everybody and none of them is controlling and determining the means and purposes. So that means you can't say, well, that's you are the controller because you are the one and you're the only one who is determining the means and purposes. No, this is obviously not the case. There are everybody who is somehow processing this data. So we can't say that there is a concrete legal or natural person who is in charge of this processing. And on the other hand, we also can't say who's the processor, because everybody is in a way helping or not helping, who are the miners, are the processors for somebody else. So you can see obviously that the text of the GDPR and the concrete roles given by the GDPR don't fit the decentralized system, which leads to the question how we want to handle this case.
I see. And of course, this is a very big issue, but can you just tell us, why is it important who is the controller or processor? We have listeners from all over the world. I'm not sure if everyone is actually in knowledge about these questions. Can you just enlighten us why it's important to know who's the controller or processor under EU GDPR?
Sure. The point is that being processor or controller is not only the question who you are, but it is also the question which obligations you have got under the GDPR. So one can see that there are lots of duties to be fulfilled by the controller. It starts with the duty to have all the necessary documentation on the one hand, and of course, which is also important, you have, as controller, you are liable for everything which is happening while you are processing personal data. So these are the two main questions or the two main issues for being a controller. And this is also the question actually where the data subject has to ask for right to access or right to rectification, because everything is in a way like a pyramid. So there is one person handling all the processes from above, and everything goes in this direction. And here we don't have this person in a decentralized scenario. So who is liable in the Bitcoin blockchain, or who needs to fulfill all the obligations towards the data subject in this blockchain scenario? So these are all questions which are raising because we just don't know how to handle this first determination or definition of a controller, and in the second step, how to handle all the obligations related to being a controller.
Okay, thank you very much. At the beginning, you underlined, but it's whenever you're facing such a question, it's very important to look at the different blockchains. For example, let's start with a permission-based private blockchain. Do we have an issue with a question of who's controller and who's the processor here?
Yes and no. Of course, all the blockchain scenarios are different, but in a closed permission blockchain, so this is easier because we can see, okay, we have got like the users, we have got the validators, and there we can address who is fulfilling which tasks, which are more or less similar to those being in the GDPR. So there we can say, okay, we have got, for example, controllers, and we also have got the gatekeeper, for example, who may be a processor. And this is easier in this scenario because we have got actors who fulfill special purposes, and that is why it makes us easier also to address all the liabilities and the duties.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so there we can maybe handle the issue. And then you, of course, talked about the permissionless public blockchains, and you already named the Bitcoin blockchain. So what do we do there?
Well, this is a pretty good question, and actually,
I'm known for asking
kind of
pretty good questions. I'm known for that.
Well, from a lawyer's perspective, I would say as long as no data protection authority is fining, we don't have a problem.
That's a good approach.
But actually, from my point of view, this is pretty hard to say that we can get it somehow compliant for two reasons. One of the reasons is, well, we have got the immutability of the blockchain. So in case we would like to change something, yeah, we like to implement GDPR in some way, this would definitely mean that we need to change the Bitcoin blockchain, and this would be really interesting how we would like to do that on the one hand, and on the other hand, our approaches. When I come back, for example, to the DIN spec, we have written together this standard for processing in a more or less compliant way in the blockchain scenario. We can't apply it for this kind of blockchain, perhaps. So there are solutions, but the point is, and this is also one of the things that GDPR is asking us for. It's privacy by design. So it means before we are launching a blockchain application, before we are coding a blockchain, we also should take into account what kind of data shall be processed on this blockchain and how do we want to safeguard that we are obeying all the rules. And now we have got a product which is running for several years with a lot of information on that. This is the Bitcoin blockchain. And from my point of view, we can't get it compliant from the way how the GDPR is interpreted now. The only thing, and I don't think that this will ever happen, is that the legislator says like the GDPR is not applicable for the Bitcoin blockchain, for example. But I don't think that this is happening because many people also say, well, Bitcoin, this is kind of an anonymized financial instrument, or I don't know, possibility to pay something or to get money or to receive it, whatever. This is not the case. This is pseudonymized data. And that is why the GDPR is definitely applicable. And this should be kind of a legislator's will to exclude public blockchains from the GDPR. But I don't think this will ever happen. So we keep the fingers crossed that the DPAs, the data protection authorities, won't have a too close look on that, and will just say, okay, this happened and that's fine. And we don't have a legislator's exemption, but we just, we just don't care about it. So this is how I think this will be solved. But for the new applications and for any kind of new use cases, I don't think that they won't have a look on that and say, well, this is happening and we don't care about it. This is what I don't think.
Thank you so much. Of course, I could imagine that some of the listeners are now a little worried that the Bitcoins they purchased in Europe might be invalid because to EU GDPR reasons. But I think we should underline one thing. When you're in Europe and you use, for example, an exchange like Binance Jersey or whatever to buy Bitcoin, the gate opener to Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain, the on-ramp mechanism, it has to be fully EU GDPR compliant,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You agree, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
probably
Definitely.
that is maybe the issue where the supervisory authorities will look at the exchanges, at the on-ramps mechanisms. But I understand, of course, also the point that the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain as such, as an example for a permissionless public blockchain, really puts up some challenges. One thing that maybe interests some of the listeners, can you explain why Bitcoin is only pseudonymized and not anonymized?
Well, despite the prejudice or the false information that it is anonymized, it is not, because you need at least to register on a, as you said, like for example, Binance or another trading platform, you need to register. So one can see that it was, your public key, it was your wallet, that is you who has been registered, and at least in case some fraudulent action happened or whatever, the prosecutor has got a claim towards towards Binance or any kind of other trading platform. So they need to share your data. So definitely it is only in a way encrypted that, or not encrypted, it is pseudonymized in a way that behind you only have got the public key, for example, and nobody can see from an obvious point of view that it's Dennis or it's Olga, but you can find it out. And as long as the re-identification is possible, the data is definitely pseudonymized and it is not anonymized. And that's why the GDPR is applicable, because for anonymized data, the GDPR is not applicable. Obviously, because the GDPR wants to save the privacy of a person. And when you can't even identify who the person is, there is no need to save something. So that's why anonymized data is out of the scope of the GDPR, and pseudonymized data is in the scope of GDPR. So for all of those who might think, but I even don't think that your listeners think that it is anonymized, it is not.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we see there's a challenge, and so far there's no ideal solution for that. Of course, Olga and me worked on a standard at the German Institute for Standardization, and we might have figured out some solutions. Would you like to say, I mean, it's not yet published, it's not yet officially published, so we need to keep it a little secret, but maybe you can say 2 or 3 sentences about it, Olga, if you like.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to say that I really enjoyed the cooperation of techies and lawyers, because I think
me too. That was really cool. Thank you for mentioning that. Go on, please.
Yes. So I think this is the step in the right direction, because, the techies have got a different understanding, for example, of erasure, and that's why the right to erasure or rectification is a bit different in their way of understanding. This is one point, and the lawyers, they can't claim that they know everything and everywhere, because most of the people, except those who worked on the standard, or most of lawyers, are not really deep into technical questions. So I thought that it was a really good approach to bring both groups together to start working, because we had really interesting conversation, especially on the question what is deleted and what is not deleted, for example. And one of the solutions I personally like is the question of hashing, and how to do it in a way that the data is deemed not pseudonymized but anonymized in a way. And here we can see that in Europe we have got some guidelines of the CNIL, of the French Data Protection Authority, and also a really important paper of the Spanish Data Protection Authority, published together with the European Data Protection Officer. And this is what I really, really liked. So it was a really great day when it was published, because they have got kind of a bypass solution in a way. So they use salt and pepper. I will explain, wait a second, what's that, in order to get data in a way not accessible, that they are deemed deleted. So what does this mean? This paper is actually dealing with the question of how to use the hashing function for pseudonymization. For example, the hashing function which gives you 200, the SHA 256, yes. And in a way, it gives you the hash. This is the outcome, and this hash may be supplemented by a random, random numbers. This is the so-called salt, for example, and that in the end the hash looks different than before. So when we are hashing, for example, your name, Dennis Hillemann, and we put in the end like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the hash will be different than your name solely. And by using this technique, also by using a so-called pepper, we we change the hash. And when we delete this specially added salt or pepper, then we receive a hash which we can't re-identify anymore because something is missing. And this is a really, not a straightforward solution, but in a way it is helping, because we have what the GDPR is asking us for. We have the non-re-identification, and that is the same actually as erasing from just erasing, like just deleting. So in case you can't see who is behind, this is the same like it is deleted. So this is a legal question on the one hand, and of course on a technical one. And this is a solution which is possible, but definitely not applicable for all and every blockchain ecosystem. But this is one point. And another point I also like is the so-called zero knowledge proof. That means that you are asking the blockchain a question, and it doesn't give you the concrete information, the concrete data, but it is giving you an answer. So, for example, somebody wants to purchase alcohol, and in Germany you need to be over 18 for that, and you want to do it, on the internet. And the website is asking, are you over 18 or under 18? And they don't say how old you are. They don't say that you are 40 or 35 or 30. They just say over 18 or under 18. And this is also a really interesting thing and a good solution for achieving data minimization, because this solution only gives you the data or the information which is necessary for you, and no additional information, because obviously when you want to buy alcohol, it doesn't matter whether you are 40 or 35 as long as you are over 18. So just like two things I really like, which we were working on, but yes, there are lots of other things, and hopefully you can read them soon when the DIN standard will be published.
I will absolutely inform the listeners about it, and there probably will be another podcast episode then with Christian Wirth, who was the initiator of the whole DIN standard, with Michael Collane, who was already on this podcast. And thank you very much, Olga. That was very good summary of very good solutions for tackling EU-GDPR issues and blockchain in general. But we have other issues that you already started at the beginning. The second subject of the day is the right to rectification of the right to erasure in blockchain. Can you, first of all, tell us a little about what does it mean, the right to rectification, the right to erasure in a general GDPR context?
Well, the GDPR has got the focus that data can't be processed for all and every time. That means that after the legal basis is not applicable anymore, and the purpose for the processing someday is not current anymore. You need to stop processing personal data. Just to give you an example, today somebody is buying something at any kind of online platform. He or she receives the purchased goods, and the platform needs to keep this data for the payment for 10 years, because this is written in the German taxation legislation. So after these 10 years, they need to destroy the invoice and all data related to this person. Of course, there are also a bit of different things to take into account, but however, this is the general idea. We have got the storage limitation, so someday you need to delete this data. And who needs to do that? This needs to be done by the controller. So we see, okay, first issue, who is the controller, who is the one being obliged to comply with this right to erasure. And that is one question. The other question is the immutability, the general immutability of the blockchain, which means that the blockchain can't be, can't be switched in a way, can't be amended, can't be altered in a way. And here we have got kind of a clash of cultures. So on the one hand, someone who needs to be the controller has to comply with the right to the erasure. And on the other hand, we have got immutability. So this is a really, really big threat, because it is obviously that we have got a problem in here. And for complying with the right to erasure, right to rectification, we have built some kind of solutions, as I mentioned previously, for example, by using salt and pepper while hashing, or for example, somehow with the zero knowledge proof in case we don't have any kind of plain data. And this is really technological when we go deep inside, but this is actually the question. And we can't solve it only on a legal way, but saying, well, the GDPR is not applicable for blockchain scenarios. Well, everybody would start a blockchain scenario in order to circumvent the obligations under the GDPR. Yeah. And on the other hand, we need to take the privacy into account. And of course, when we are applying blockchain solutions for whatever use cases, we also want to be customer friendly and to rectify data or to erase data when the obligation to do so is given. So these are the two things. And as I mentioned before, there are solutions depending on the concrete blockchain scenario.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, this was tackled in the German standard where we worked on as well, right?
Yes, sure. And I only want to emphasize that there is not the one solution. This is really important. There are different solutions depending on what kind of use case you are faced with. But in general, there are a few things which are really recommendable for everyone who has got ever in mind of setting up a blockchain. We have got the principle of privacy by design, which means, first of all, think about privacy before doing something. So first of all, check whether you need to have personal data at all, because in case no personal data is involved, the GDPR is not applicable. So perhaps there are kind of solutions where you just don't need all these questions. For example, in case you want to track, you want to do tracking in the maritime industry, you want to know where the goods are, which are delivered from China to Hamburg, for example. There, perhaps you even don't need to have personal data, just as giving a kind of an example. And of course, there are use cases where you definitely need, like, for example, I was working on a case recently where I was providing legal advice to a university in Germany, which wanted to have all the certificates, degrees, master degrees, whatever, on the blockchain. And there, of course, you can't, you need to have personal data, but you can ask yourself, do I need to have plain personal data on the blockchain? What kind of blockchain I'm building? Is it a public blockchain I'm building? Is it a permission blockchain I'm building? And who are the actors in the concrete scenario? So there is a really, really great planning process before starting to code something. And I really want to emphasize the point that there are solutions, but it is really important to take care about the planning beforehand, how you want to treat personal data in this scenario.
That's a very good solution, very good hint for any listener working on the blockchain, like to plan very well. Let's tackle the third issue, the transfer to third countries. You gave a very interesting and presentation at an event in November that was organized by Jörn Erbgut, and which I attended as well. And you gave a very good presentation on transfer to third countries. First of all, can you tell us what's the general approach of GDPR when it comes to transfer of data to third countries that are not subject to GDPR?
Well, the general approach is not to tackle this really hard to answer questions. So there was a brilliant court decision. I think it was in 2003, the so-called Lindquist decision. And as you see, well, 2003, so it was under the old law and not under the GDPR. And since the GDPR did not provide us any kind of special or different rules on that, we just assume that this former decision is still in force for all the third country transfers. So what happened in this case, there was a Swedish person who uploaded data on a European server for the website, which was hosted on this European server. And the question was whether this constituted a third country data transfer. Because in case it would be the case, this person violated the relevant data protection rules, because this third country data transfer was not safeguarded under the mechanisms provided by the relevant data protection law. So in the end, the court said, well, it is not sufficient to upload something on the internet. You need to have the intent that it is going to be assessed somewhere in the third country. So here it was a website of a church, and there was some kind of data with regards to people who worked for this church being uploaded on this website. And the court said, well, there is no real intent that it will be assessed somewhere abroad, out of the borders of the European Union. So that means that taking this decision into account, we need to ask how this may apply for the blockchain scenario. So in case we have got a blockchain which is public, like the Bitcoin blockchain, we definitely can say, well, there is a real intent that it will be, it can be accessed worldwide, depending on where the person is situated, or where somebody wants to start mining, for example. Yeah. So it can be China, it can be Japan, it can be Canada, it can be USA, whatever. And you have no real influence where the person will try to access it. So just to give you another example, in case you and me would like to offer, to offer kind of guide services in Germany for Chinese persons, for Chinese tourists, and we would upload our photos on this website and use a Chinese top-level domain, so people from China directly can access this website. And we would also provide all the information on this website in Chinese language. There we rarely can say, well, this is an intent of ours to provide this website to Chinese citizens, people being situated in China, just because the website is in Chinese language, the top-level domain is Chinese, and it is clearly that we want to, market our services in China so that people from China come as tourists to Germany and ask us for our services. So this was not the case in this Lindquist decision. But again, applying this to the blockchain scenario of a public blockchain, we can say that in the end, applying consequently this Lindquist decision, we would have a third country data transfer to all the countries in the world where there is internet, and that's why there is a possibility to access this public blockchain. And of course, we need to take into account how to solve this issue. For example, by not having personal data, for example, so we are out of the scope of the GDPR, or by having a permission blockchain and by limiting access, for example, out of the European Union or countries which were deemed adequate. So we don't need to have a special safeguarding mechanisms like European standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. So there are lots of questions, and I can't say that there is a general solution, but one can see that I think even we can dig every and any article of the GDPR, and we will find a problem related to blockchain, just because this legal framework, which I really adore, by the way, was not written by having blockchain or other DLT technology in mind.
Thank you so much. That was a very good summary. Like me, you attended the roundtable of the German government on EU-GDPR and blockchain. I already made an episode about it, but can you tell us, what was your impression of the roundtable and its outcome?
Well, first of all, my impression is it is great that there was a roundtable, because I think that on the one hand, it is pretty cool that you, me, and a few other people from the techie or the lawyers are into this topic and are trying to build solutions for it. However, it is hard for us to do it on our own because we are not a governmental body so far. So it is hard for us, and it is quite good that there are governmental bodies who have this issue in mind and who see the potential of the blockchain technology on the one hand, and also the issues of the blockchain technology. So all in all, I'm happy about this first step towards really compliant solutions. My point is perhaps that we need to raise the awareness on the one hand and also the knowledge on the other hand, because I see that there is a pretty huge gap between people who are into this topic on the one hand and the governmental bodies. Because on the one hand, so many hands, okay, so
all good, all good.
So they say, well, we want, first of all, to tackle the GDPR compliance topic itself, because a lot of companies who don't use blockchain technology are not compliant themselves. So this is something, a general question. And on the other hand, I think there is a lack of knowledge, and also a lack of knowledge about possibilities for blockchain applications. So what I really liked is the statement of the representative of Bitkom, who said, well, there are lots of, according to our surveys, or questionnaires. A lot of companies who are interested in blockchain solutions and even think about implementing them. However, they are afraid of, the point that there is no regulatory framework itself. So there are a lot of other different questions, not only data protection questions when it comes to blockchain technology. And there is nothing so far being presented by the legislator, data protection authorities, or any kind of other governmental authorities. And that's why they're a bit reluctant to use this technology. And this is what I say, we have got lots of companies who would like to use it. And of course, this will make a lot of processes more efficient. And on the other hand, we have got people like you and me and others who are willing to provide kind of a regulatory framework. So I think in order to bring both of them together under the rooftop of the Ministry of Economics or whatever governmental body would be a great idea and also a great step towards a kind of a regulatory framework and a compliance solution for all of these companies. So I think we're going in the right direction, but I also think that it will take time to discuss all and everything to achieve a basic understanding on what's going on and also the chances of blockchain technology. And another thing is what I see is that Spain or France are kind of they're more into this topic, and I would wish, and I think this needs to be the claim or the ambition of Germany to be the leader in creating a regulatory framework, in creating business opportunities for blockchain application and blockchain use cases, because I think there are lots of people who are into this topic, especially in Berlin, and it would be very, very, very nice to establish a kind of a compliance structure in which will lead to the development of great solutions and, of course, which will lead to kind of economic growth in this branch.
Thank you very much. I think that are perfect last words to closing this great episode with you. Olga, how can people reach out to you if they want to have a blockchain project and need counsel on privacy or any other matter concerning privacy, even if it's not blockchain? How can we reach out to you?
Well, in general, my data is publicly accessible. So that means that you can write an email or drop me a line on LinkedIn. So yes, this is actually, I think, the most the simple solution. Or I don't know, ask Dennis. No, I'm joking. So I think it is the easiest to drop me an email, and then I will be happy to answer your questions and also to be part of your really cool blockchain project, because I think that there are really, really, really great solutions which just need more confidence when it gets to compliance issues.
Thank you so much. And also, Olga is, of course, one of the founding members of the Blockchain Lawyers Network, which you can reach under the web address www.blockchainlawyersnetwork.com. So reach out to her as well on there. Thank you, Olga, for being on the podcast. And I'm sure we will keep in touch, and we will also hopefully have you as a guest back on this podcast in the future.
Thank you for your time and also for your questions. So I really hope that the listeners will get a kind of overview on the issues between blockchain and GDPR. And yes, thank you once again, Dennis, that you are the one heading, hosting, and creating this podcast, because this is, in my opinion, also a way into bringing more, making this topic more prominent and more important to people. So thank you also for being with us.
Thank you so much, Olga. So bye for now and until soon.
Bye-bye.
If you want to learn more about Dennis, please visit his website, theblockchain.lawyer, or connect with him on LinkedIn or Twitter. Until next time, everyone.